Alright.
Hey everyone, Nevil again with my recap for my point isolation station class from Wildfire, 2013. This was meant to be an intermediate advanced class, but we went through a lot of basics as to what point isolation is and where we can port them. I really stressed and brought awareness to that the point isolation is just like a static spin. It's just like the concept of anti-spin or stalling, that you can really put them everywhere in your flow. There's beautiful intro or continuation into the illusionary aspect of point. And they utilize what are called 0 points. 0 points are easiestly found in pendulums, where you reach this moment where there's no momentum, and if you were to drop your point, it would fall completely horizontal. Other places you have 0 points are stalls and different anti-spins. At each pedal, there's a point where there is like 0 momentum in the poi head, and at all of those you can do a point isolation, which is taking the center of the ball and isolating around it. The tether from the center to your hand becomes the radius of the circle, and you can move this in a spherical way to create an isolation, such as over the top, underneath, around the sides. You can use them for plane breaking, in such things as like horizontal stalls. You can stall and then continue point isolation around. You can do them from horizontal in-spin stalls, which I find very, very awesome. So the first one we covered was same time, same direction, and a hand-to-head relationship as such. And the hand-to-head relationship continues through, as if from here we do the isolation and the hand-to-head relationship stays the same. Like so. We also discussed letting one pen from a same time, same direction pendulum, point isolating one of them, while keeping the other in a pendulum to split your timings, to go into a different timing and direction. And really using body accentuations, because poi is a kinetic prop, and any body movement affects the kinetics and the physics of the poi itself. So you can do like these different body movements to really help both accentuate and maybe make it a little easier for these point isolations. They're great, they're awesome. Also discussed how in a triquetra or in a anti-spin pentagram, you can remove the top pedal by doing a float upward and a point isolation around. So this is like a triquetra, removing the top pedal. You can do the same with the 4-pedal anti-spin flower by removing the top pedal and doing a pendulum. You can do that same basic move, and you notice your arm is still doing a full circle rotation. There's a lot of stuff we discussed, so I'm just going to keep moving along. We also discussed this really cool together opposite pendulums, doing a bouncing motion, having the non-native do a point isolation, while the native hand does a pendulum. So you can rock this back and forth. We're traveling across the top half of the circle, so we can also do this across the bottom half and create this full pattern with it. We also discussed how we can do a extension versus point isolation, which you have to, with the native hand that does the extension, you have to wait until the pendulum is almost all the way out and really use the energy, really put a lot of energy into it, into turning it into an extension. And you can enter into like isolated pendulums from there. You can do a cap, across the top versus extension, and it splits into this same thing. So you can cap, you can do triquetra. There was a triquetra versus pendulum, taking out the top pedal, putting a point isolation in there instead. And there's also that same triquetra versus pendulum where from the top to the bottom, then you switch. You do this bouncing motion and switch. And so you can do that same thing with point isolation as well. You could put them into your 1.5s, and they end up being like a 3 beat. So it goes 1, 2, 3, go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let me see. Then we dabbled into some theory, which really opens doors for hybrids and timing and direction changes. From a same time, same direction, if one hand does an anti-spin and the other does a point isolation, they go from same time, same direction into together, opposite directions. And then from together, opposite directions, back to same time, same direction. So you can end up doing basically like the same as this flower without the top pedal, putting a point isolation there instead. You can do a lot of split time, same direction chase options, just like this flower, which requires, I believe, what would be a Lovelace, which is right there, and removing the top pedal, putting a point isolation there instead. We can do triquetras in split time, same direction chase with a point isolation instead. And I just found out the other day with pentagrams, you have this pendulum right there in which you can do a point isolation. So you can do one for the triquetra portion and for the two pedals of the pentagram portion, which you can also do a split time, same direction chase with, if done, right? Like so. So, yeah, that really concludes a lot of the point isolation stuff. I hope you're able to go back through, maybe rewatch certain sections to really get a big grip over a lot of this. But remember, the bounce in this motion really helps play through with this, and that the length of your tether determines the radius of the circle. So if you have like the tech length, you're actually going to have 2 point isolations across the top, whereas if you have a point length almost of your shoulder, you're going to have just 1 length across the top. So that concludes our point isolation station recap. I hope it helps a lot, and I hope to see everyone rocking on some point isolations. Thank you.